All right. We have the big schus to have a conversation now between, first of all, Rabbi Prescott, who's the Rosh Yeshiva of Machon Smicha, in conversation with Rabbi Yosef Yeshaya Braun, who is the Mora de Asra and Chaber Beistin and the Rov of Crown Heights. So, Rabbi Braun, bechavod, and we'll take it away.
I'm not good at these things. You're not good at that? Too informal. So first of all, a big Esher Koyach, like Rabbi Kesselman said, I just want to reiterate, it's our kavod and our pleasure to hear from the Rav. The theme and the title for the Halachah Symposium has been a link in the chain. A hemshich from the Torah that Moshe got, Moshe Kibel, Torah Misinai, U'Mesara LiYisrael. The key to Mesorah. I think one of the places where that is most expressed is in Halacha. The Rambam writes that without a Mesorah, if we would just read Sfarim, we wouldn't know what an esrog is. We wouldn't know what an esrog is. We wouldn't know ayin tachas ayin, or a chayim, yeradeh, choshe mishpat. None of these halachas would be possible without a Mesorah. Brisker Rav once said that the Olam thinks you need a Mesorah to pasken. It's true. You also need a Mesorah how to ask a shailah. So it's also how we ask. So we're going to have a conversation now with the Rav about Mesorah's halacha, about how that works. But before we can answer, fireman can answer him in that fragen. So we're going to ask the Rav, what's the appropriate way to ask a shailah, to be considerate of both of the Rav's time and how much information to include, and all that the Rav thinks is negea to that particular tchuna.
Pleasure, and it's my pleasure to be here as well. This morning, Rabbi Prescott to give me some guidelines, what kind of question he's going to be asking me. So he sent me a list of some basic ideas. So this morning, I spoke to my wife, and I told her what the questions are, and I told her, I think you can do a better job at this. Just from experiencing, talking about shimush, just from experiencing and hearing the kind of phone calls people ask and the kind of questions they ask, till they get to the question. There's a lot of parts to it. There's so many aspects to it. I jotted down some notes, but I'm not sure if I'm even going to use the notes, because it might be better if I talk just from what comes to hand. Just yesterday, I had someone come to my office. I think it was yesterday. When in the business of Rabbanan, sometimes you forget what was yesterday and the day before. So someone came to my office, 70, 80-year-old person, and he was describing to me, he has to sit down, he has to talk to me. By the way, very often, a lot of these conversations, you don't have to sit down and talk to the Rav, you could just do this over the phone, and in 30 seconds, we're over and done with it. And when you're talking to the Rav, you're sort of taking away his time, not from himself, because that he doesn't have anyhow, but from his time for many other people. And some people actually need to have a sit-down conversation. So your first question you have to ask yourself, is this something that the Rav needs to sit down and have a meeting with you for half an hour? Is it something, or the other way around? Some people ask me a question about suicide, about who knows what, and abortion, you name it, while I'm walking into the mikveh. This happened so many times to me. I remember just when I first came here to Crown Heights, I'm walking down the block up Kingston, and the guy started asking me a question which involved yuchsin, pikuach nefesh. No, just while you're walking. I'm not going to take your time, just while you're walking. So we have a website called Ask the Rav. So we have templates for certain kind of... We have templates for different kind of questions. The person's going to ask a choshe mishpat question. I'm not going to answer, obviously, because there's two sides. So we over time, we get shimush in the kind of questions people are asking. We have a template called complex. This question cannot be addressed through this forum. Please call a Rav of your choice. The best numbers and such. There's certain questions. So this person, going back to the person that met me the other day, he's telling me he saw a video of the Rebbe, and it's not the regular shul that he davens, and in that shul they had after davening, he had a video of the Rebbe, and he took this as a sign, Malamayla, and the Rebbe spoke about having a shir in Taras HaMashpacha. So for some reason he took this as an indication, he's 70, that he should learn Taras HaMashpacha, and he's feeling very guilty about something, a particular experience that happened some 50 years ago. And he shared with me the experience. So I said, okay, let's analyze. Okay, when was this? I don't remember the details. Okay, so from the details that he told me, everything was perfectly fine. The problem was that he told his wife everything is fine. And he feels guilty, he should have asked a shailah. So I said, let's break this down. There's the shailah itself and the fact that you didn't ask a shailah. So in terms of the shailah, you were right. Everything was fine. Now the issue you have is that you didn't ask a shailah. So let's talk about that. When do you ask a shailah? Do you call a Rav every single day and ask him about bracha making a tomato? Or you rely on the psak from yesterday? How does that work? So I tried to explain to him, is which things are shailah, which is not. And a bit of a guide could be from, there's a sefer called Kitz Shulchan Aruch. It's a perfect sefer. The person who wrote Kitz Shulchan Aruch, Shlomo Gansfried, by the way, knew how to learn Torah besides writing a Kitzer. He has some nice Sfarim out there. Not only Drush, like Apirion, he has Lechem V'Simon, Hilchas Nida, he has Sfarim on Safras, going on some. But he wrote a Kitzer for the masses. So many times, half the questions, by the way, that people ask Rav are in Kitz Shulchan Aruch. Not half. 90% of the questions are in Kitz Shulchan Aruch. And really, it's wrong. You should be learning Kitz Shulchan Aruch. You're not supposed to be asking a shailah. I remember once someone walking by Rabbi Marlow and asking him, can I give my stuff to the cleaners in Chalamoid? And if anybody knows Rabbi Marlow, one thing you should not learn from him, he's very curt and he kept on walking. I spent a lot of time with him. That's the part that I decided I'm not going to adopt, even though by nature it's automatically happening due to the volume of questions. So he's continuing to walk, and the guy goes like a nudge. But why not? It's a Kitz Shulchan Aruch, come on, you're not asking me. So in the Kitzer, there's a guide. Every so often he writes Yasser Shalas Chacham. You'll notice. Well, just write me the answer, because it's complex. It's actually not even that complex, but there's details. The minute there's details, if it's like this, and it's like that. Anybody who learns Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch knows that some people, they learn one sif. I have no idea why they translate Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and English beats me. If you don't know the original Hebrew, the English is not going to do anything for you. Whatever. It's a perspective. I'm not suggesting there's a different perspective. You learn one sif in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, okay, I know the answer. But 9 sifim later he writes, Bamed v'aram amurim. Bamed v'aram means that everything I told you till now is only if X. In the Kitzur, you won't have that. Kitzur's, if it's straightforward, yes, no. It's a yes or no question. But that's another, by the way, rule in shimush. It's a yes or no question. There's no such a thing as a yes or no question. It's no such thing as an easy question. Every question is difficult. But having said that, there's certain things, it's complex, or it requires dimi milsa la milsa. We're talking about people that are learning smicha, so there's knowing what it says in the books, and then he's trying to be madama milsa la milsa, taking a precedent and comparing it to a modern situation, to a contemporary situation, or even not a modern situation, another situation which is not in the lab, but in practice. You can learn how to bomb nuclear bombs in the lab. Weapons. But then when you're on Iraq territory, so part of what they do with the soldiers, with the Chlau and the army, they teach them, they simulate all kind of different scenarios. What will happen if? I know you know all the rules, but everything changes. It's the olam mishtaneh, the world changes. So first thing I guess I could say to your question is, first it's important to learn. Because if you learn, you won't have a lot of shilas. Second of all, there's a famous Pischei Teshuva brings that when a person went and asked a shailah, I think it's in Simon Tzaddik testing it today, if a person asked a shailah and he went to the Lamdim and Beis HaMedrash and he relied on the Lamdim, then he's called a mezid, not a shoigig. Lamdis and Rabbanis are two different worlds. I never understood what it means a Litvish Pesach. Excuse the pun. If the Litvish derech halimit, which is a beautiful derech halimit, it's a good derech, then we should adapt it. But what does that have to do with halacha? Lamdas belongs in the Beis HaMedrash, halacha belongs in the Beis Heira. They're two different worlds. And that's also part of, we're going to probably come to this question about shimush, to know was yeah and was nish. What stays in one world, what goes into another world. So if the minute you start to analyze, take apart, okay, that's not your domain. That's not part of the shailah. Another thing in terms of a shailah, if people that give me long run-on sentences, not in writing, verbally, and have no idea what they want. So the first thing, narrow down your question to the Rav and tell him only the details that are relevant. Don't tell the Rav, and it wasn't my fault, it was the cleaning lady, and I told my cleaning lady 10 times. I'm going to give you skills today for Chenek, I'm going to do something to you. Maybe I will, but that will come after the shailah. The first thing is, what's the actual shailah? It was a milchig spoon. Sorry, Pasha didn't get the details after your whole, I lost you already. My head is already somewhere else, and another person waiting online. So it's a milchig spoon, it was a ben yoime, it was a eine ben yoime. even the basic details. And also, what are you asking about? Sometimes literally it sounds strange. I don't know if the person asked me a question, Hilchas Ribus, in Amidl Nachri, or Muktzah. I have no idea where you're getting. The first thing right away, the person asks me a shaylah, I'm right away thinking, okay, this is a Hilchas Shabbos question. My brain is already working. And then it was, oh my gosh. No, he kept on going about Shabbos and Shabbos, but it had nothing to do with Hilchas Shabbos. It was really asking me advice in Avodas Hashem. Tell me what you're asking, where you're coming from. You might not know where you come from because you don't know halacha. That could be. But at least if you do know, you ask me a question. Is it a muktzah question? Is that your question you want to ask me? Tell me what you want to ask me. So leave out all the irrelevant details. My wife, I was talking to my wife this morning, so she tells me, what about the guy that I called last week? Which one? So one on Friday. So she was punked there, and somebody called me, and he asked, am I allowed to put on film to someone after the Makabal Shabbos? They were Makabal Shabbos already. So I said, where are you calling from? And she was listening to this conversation. Why am I asking where he's calling? She didn't hear what the person's asking me. I'm calling from France. Okay, now I understand the shailah. He's calling me Friday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You cannot be Makabal Shabbos. He's going on Mitzrayim. He's putting on tefillin with Jews. You can't be Makabal Shabbos at 1. If this person was Makabal Shabbos at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not a Kabbalah Shabbos. It doesn't count. Even if it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, if it's before Plaga Mincha, it's not a Kabbalah Shabbos. I didn't know he was calling me with an American number, but he's not telling me he's calling me from France. So sometimes those pratam anageya. It's also important, by the way, to know which Rav you're talking to, because every Rav has different rules. One Rav, you actually stop him in the shul. That's the best place. When we'll talk more about shimush, I'll talk about my grandfather, but I would love to watch how people stop them in shul. I can't stand watching when people stop me in shul, and the other Rav, no, shul is not his place. He comes to shul purely just to say the words to the Eibishter and get out of there as soon as possible to get back to his office. He has a place called his office. He likes when you ask him shailas via email. He doesn't answer via email. He answers only via text. He uses WhatsApp. He has his hours. And know the Rav you're talking to and know his style. Know if he's one of those Rabbanim that are like, let's get to the point because he has a whole volume of shailas and he's a Rav that you could sit and listen to your drasha and talk about your shalom bayis and about your pekuach nefesh situation with your older mother in the hospital and about all the shailas that you have all in one go. You have to know who you're talking to. And if this, one of the best rules is to use the same Rav all the time because then all your personal aspects, sometimes your personal aspects are relevant to the shailah. Are you a Baal Tshuva? It's relevant, by the way. Is it a frum family? Are you dealing with a shalom bayis issue right now? Your wife is not frum and you are frum. Are you Sephardi? Are you Ashkenazi? Are you OCD? B'derech klal, I have them, all the OCD people already marked on my phone. So, and those that are not, by the way, you could see right from the beginning of the question. Yesterday I got a ride back from the oil and the guy was with me, offered me a ride. I said, I don't know if you want to offer me a ride because I'm going to be on the phone the whole time. He thought he was going to sit and talk to me. And I was on the phone. He said, you don't get a break? Whatever. So let's not deal with that part. And someone called me, and I'm so far on the other line also, while I'm talking to him and his family also, and answering the emails, asked the Rav. So the person calls, and he said just 2 words, and I said, I'm sorry, this is not the kind of, I can't deal with that question right now. And I hung up, I said, this guy's not Jewish. He says, how do you know? I said, how do you know? You pick this up, you see how the guy is talking. First of all, he's not a New Yorker. If he's a New Yorker, he would go straight to the point. If he's from out of town, he says, are you Rabbi Braun? Can I ask you a shailah? Do you have time now? Okay, you're not from New York. This guy, I could see right away he's not Jewish, just the way, he didn't say any words, right? You could tell. So if the Rav knows you, he knows you have OCD, it's not a shailah b'chal if you have OCD. Could be it's not a shailah. What did the Rav once tell someone with OCD? Tell this woman, all your shailahs for the next year are all tahir. That's a klal, I'm telling you in advance. But the same exact question, if it's OCD, that means it's not actually really true. It never happened. The story didn't happen. It's all in your mind. It actually didn't happen. I don't know. I made a chafifa, prepared for the mikvah, and I'm not sure with my nail. You're not. So sometimes I don't know if the person is OCD. I say, are you not sure about everything? It's only about this. I'm not going to ask them straight out. So no, it's a general thing. I doubt myself. Okay, so gegangen weiter. Actually, in Hilchas Nida, in about Tefillah, the first place we have OCD in the Torah is the Ramban in Hilchas Nida, talking about women that sometimes have way too much OCD. The halachah itself is very obsessive in the details, and that could, people that already have a tendency for OCD could actually increase the level of OCD. But this is an important detail. When I was in Sydney, I was a Rav in Sydney in a small community, so I knew every person asked me a shailah. I knew their background, I knew their context, I knew if they have money, they don't have money. That makes a big difference, by the way. Hefsid Meruba, Hakalafi. You have to know the person that you're talking to. So I knew the people. My wife always laughs about the fact that in Sydney I had a very interesting minhag. Every Matzah Yom Kippur, I would call all the people that asked me shailah about fasting. All the people means 3, 5, 7. In New York, I don't call all the people that ask me shailah about fasting because I'll still be making phone calls today based on Yom Kippur shilas. I don't even know all the people that asked me. I'm not shaykh Matzias. So if the Rav knows who you are, so one of the things that I dealt with, there's a particular issue in Hilchas Nida, in Hilchas Tvila. I'll give the example about, what do you call those nails? People that grow their nails long. Now, al pi halach, you're supposed to cut your nails before mikveh. But there's already manicures, there's a Chaim Oizer, there's all different colors. Now, we don't rely on that, but if there's a mikveh and a woman wants to go to the mikveh, so we're not going to kick her out of the mikveh. We'd rather that she tevels in the mikveh than she doesn't tevel. We'll sometimes take out from the box some kula. And the only reason for this kula is that we shouldn't get into issues of chayva krisis, which is much more serious. So you need a way what's more important. I was told to come here at 12, right? So I asked you yesterday, are we going to be running on time? You said yes. Okay, now I always forget this, that whenever people say yes, it means no about running on time. Whatever, so I have this thing, I like being on time. Avert is avert. But today I was like stuck with two situations and I had to balance. Should I finish davening? Or should I be on time? I got stuck with many things. Normally you take, whatever amount of time you take into account, you have to take into account all the people that are going to stop you on the way there and the way back. And it's so much more. And it's like 5, I know I'm going to come 4 minutes late. What's more important? I should finish davening with Rabbeinu Tam right after Rashi, say the whole Tillim. And I have to make a value. What's more important, right? So you have to make a judgment. You have to make a judgment call. Is it more important that she goes to the mikveh? You can't make that judgment call. That's an example where you need to talk to a Rav. Anything that requires a judgment call is a Rav, it's not you. So in Sydney, I knew the person that called me, but here I got a phone call. I have no idea this is a shliach sent a woman to me that she's the first time going to the mikveh, or it's a Lubavitch lady in Crown Heights that's been using the mikveh since, I don't even know who I'm talking to. So how was I supposed to answer such a question? So I learned to say, tell them exactly that. It really depends. Are you one of those people, if I tell you, then you would stop going to the mikveh? Then the answer would be such. So I have to say that as part of the equation. Now, I think we dealt somewhat with the question you asked.
Yes. Yesher Kayach. So if I can summarize, first of all, introduce the tchuna. I have a shailah in Hilchas Shabbos, a shailah in Hilchas Kashrus, Hilchas Nida, the like, as well as if the Rav doesn't know you, if there is background information that's important, family background, don't have it come out in the course of the conversation. Think about it before. Put notes, like you're interviewing a professional, you're going to professional. Obviously, the Rav cares about you and wants to hear, but yeah, you have to make the pertinent information aware.
But only stick to the information that's relevant.
The relevant. So that itself requires a maser in how to ask. So the Rav mentioned, and this was also mentioned by the Rabbanim previously, the difference between somebody that learned the halachas and somebody that was meshamish in the halachas. And the Rav also mentioned in the course of the conversation, the Rav Zayda, the Shar Mitzir Milacha. And if we could just have a conversation, what is shimush? Meaning it's very interesting to know you learn halachas. I know that I learned Hilchas Basar V'Chalav. I learned Hilchas Nida. I know to what degree, which I didn't learn the Pardas Rimonim. I learned the Chavas Das. What I learned and how well I learned it, you can learn. Is a shimush? What is shimush? Is there a barometer to shimush?
Okay.
Sure.
That's good. I'm just going to add something to the previous question. I'll go right back to this question. Just an observation. When you have to ask a Rav, if it's a question that you can't ask your brother or your sister or your husband or your wife or your friend, then you have to ask a Rav. But if your brother knows the answer, you happen not to know, then don't waste the Rav's time. But if your brother thinks he knows the answer, it's very something different. Back to the shimush idea. There's many parts of the shimush, but first is shimush in terms of understanding the person's question. So you need shimush just to practice. I'm not even talking about psak right now. Just understanding people's questions. It's watching someone else. Someone told me many years ago that Rav Ashkenazi from Kfar Chabad about his gewaldigkeit, but Rav Ashkenazi, not about his goyness right now. Someone asked him a question and started off the question like this. I had a baby on Wednesday, and he said, the pidyon ben is? So the guy didn't even finish the question. And he was telling me, wow, so pikach. I said, that's not pikach. I'll do the same. It's like obvious. What else? When a person says something, I had a baby on Wednesday, it's either going to be a question about bris milah, if they finish the sentence and say Wednesday at 8, once they say the time, if they say the baby, I had a baby on Wednesday, they know it's a pidna ben shailah. Or if he says this day of the month. I mean, it's obvious. Like sometimes you just understand the question without having the person even have to say any details. The famous story with the Beis HaLevi about milk for Arba Kosos. Right? The person asked the Beis HaLevi if he allowed to use milk for Dalet Kosos, and the Beis HaLevi sent him food for everything that he needs. So how do you understand it? Well, if he's asking about milk for Dalet Kosos, that means he's not eating meat. That means he has no money for meat. So it's obvious. So sometimes to understand what's behind the question. If a person is asking about making Kiddush between 6 and 7, it's b'derech klal shalom bayis question. It's not a question on Hilchos Kiddush between 6 and 7. It has nothing to do with that topic, actually. It's actually a question about, I mean, that's like obvious. So how does it become obvious? When you watch it, when you experience it, when you hear it from someone else, and you go through every single time you hear, you see the way he answers the question, before you even get to knowing what to answer, understanding the question. And that is the way how to answer. Certainty, no hesitation. Menschlich, but with kifas. Tahir, 100%. When I leave a message on the phone about a shailah, I say, hello, you dropped off a shailah. Says Rabbi Braun, you dropped off a shailah? Yes. They're both fine. They're 100% fine. So the people that are watching me ask me, why do you repeat yourself? Because if I don't repeat myself, they say, you sure it's okay? So when they ask me, are you sure it's okay? I say, I don't say anything that I'm not sure about. Now, a Rav has a lot of hesitation. If you don't have hesitation, you're in the wrong business. A Rav has to be a Yireh Heirah. He has to be scared to pasken. But all that fear is between you and the Eibishter in front of Daran Kodesh, inside Daran Kodesh, I don't know, middle of davening, wherever. There's a lot of that Yireh Heirah. In your mind is so much Yireh Heirah. But the minute you talk to the other person, there's no Yireh Heirah. To him, you give him a clear 100% mutter, 100% usr. Because if he hears any hesitation in your voice, first of all, he loses trust in the system. Number one. And number two, if he sees, b'derech klal, zok men as metarnished. Okay, b'derech klal, we say that you're not allowed to mean, okay, that's fine, I'm allowed to do it. No. Isur, it's an isur gomer. Mutter gomer. These extra words we add. No gomer, and there's a reason for them. It's mamish usur. And so even just in the way how to answer. But then there's what the psak should be. Sometimes there's certain svara, certain ideas that are pashut, so far-fetched, for the purpose of learning they're very, very good, but it has nothing to do with psak. There's kloli halacha, which mechabrim we use, which we don't. There's these famous, some of them are written in books, and something you pick up, the Matafraim is the Rav. There's a famous line, the Matafraim is the Rav, and it's come to Chedesh Tishrei. The Rechaim is the Rav, Shad Ephraim is the Rav, same mechaber in Kriyas HaTorah. There's different people. Here it's the Shach, here it's so-and-so. Some of the people wrote very nice books, but they're beautiful books for learning. It has nothing to do with studying. But there's also klolim. The Raisa, the Rabbanon. What are we talking about? My grandfather taught me, he used to always say this, the erste Sach darf man machen von dem der Rabbunen. Someone asked you a shailah, let's turn into a shailah de Rabban, because a shailah de Raisa, it's a very serious shailah. It became a de Rabbanon, now I could deal with it. So let's try to manipulate the shailah, make it into the Rabbanon. I'm talking, this is rabbinic language, you have to know what that means. So there's certain things, they're great ideas, but they're not makubal, they're not acceptable, they're not these, we don't use that. When are you going to be mekel, when are you going to be machmer? Knowing broad shoulders. Why are you answering this kind of question? This question is actually, you need to have breite places, broad shoulders. How do you know that you need to have breite places and certain questions shouldn't be answering when you're watching an experienced Rav and you see sometimes I'm going to call someone else. No, you have to call together all the Rav Ashi used to call together all the butchers to make a psak, because not to carry it only on his own shoulders. The beam should be carried by everyone. Sometimes the Rav has a shailah and he says, you know what, I'm going to ask someone else. But you also have to know who to ask. My brother, I have a few Rabbanim that are into Hira. It's a family business. My grandfather, my father, my brothers. So you pick up a lot. I mean, we talk about shimush, just formal shimush, and then there's so much more shimush when you're living in that environment. But literally living, I enjoyed going to my grandfather just from as a little kid. When I was 9 years old, he came and asked me shilas that they asked him in shul. I remember one Shabbos they were going to make a new elections for the president, for the vice president, and they're going to do elections in the shul. And they said, why don't we do it on I was Yom Tov, actually. Why don't we do it on Yom Tov? There's a Chassidische Sfarim, there's going to be a Minhag, Pesach, different times of the year. But to do the elections, it works with raffles. The people. So he asked me, "Nu buzuksti?" I don't know. Wouldn't have a clue. Anyhow, anyhow, but just watching all of that, I was in the middle of saying something. I don't know. I lost myself on my point.
Formal and informal.
Before that, anyhow, so there's certain things that you have to know when you could be lenient, when you could be strict. Oh, and what you need to ask someone else. This I'm not going to ask on my own. So I started thinking about my brother. My brother, someone asked him an end-of-life question. He knows how to learn very, very well. I have a few brothers. This brother is not the one that I talk to normally when I have a shailah. I have one brother I talk to him, I have a shailah. I feel b'chlal when I talk to a person with a shailah, if it's a Rav, if I talk to him and he doesn't, and I have to tell him what it says. If I'm calling someone else, that means I studied this topic well. That's why I'm calling someone else, because I'm stuck. So I went through the Shach, and I went through the Taz, I went through the Pri Megadim, and now I have a problem with something, so I'm calling, and I have to start telling him what it says in Pri Megadim, so why am I wasting my time with him? I have a brother, whatever, Kala Teire, Prusilafanav, I could talk to him, Sedu and Achivas, Ateiris Chachumim, whatever it is. He talks about, okay, so I got some clarity, something that you don't get necessarily through Yitzhak Chachma. Anyhow, the search program. So my brother was asked a shailah about end of life, a different brother actually, and he said, this you have to ask by someone it's a very serious question. At the time Rabbi Yashiv was alive, Rabbi Yashiv, someone. Anyhow, the guy went, and he asked his local Rav in his shul. Some people don't know the difference. So my brother told him, and this is sharp. Eim kemnish fregen a shalem v'sayin telemuter. He doesn't know how to answer if you forgot the same telemuter, and he's going to answer these kind of questions. I've met quite a few people like that. They answer the most serious, complex questions, and they're mamash amaratzim in basic erechaim that everybody should know in Yalav Yavi questions. They're experts. They're mamash experts in their field. Experts. But how can a person be an expert in Even Ezer on pikuach nefesh, end of life issues, fertility issues, when he doesn't know basics? So you need to know who to ask, how to ask. All this is part of the shimush that you're learning with someone, when to consult with someone else, when not to consult with someone else. The Gemara says that Rav said that I spent 18 months with a shepherd to understand the animal's anatomy and halachas of mumim. 18 months he spent. There's a big complex issue, Rabbi Krakow, we actually have a conversation about this that's going on now in the frum world, about ovary transplants. So I spoke to a Rav, a Talmud Chacham, Otzim, wrote Svarim, and he told me, I wrote a tshuva on this topic. So I said, can you explain to me the mitzvahs? I'm not so good about the mitzvahs. I don't know the mitzvahs very well, but I wrote a tshuva on the topic. He actually wrote a beautiful tshuva, seriously. One of the nicest ones out there on this topic. But he told me straight out, I don't know the mitzvahs very well. I can't explain it. Why are you writing a tshuva on a topic? They have zero clue what the mitzvahs is. Oips is a kurkevin. Skasher. Oips is a beisakoisis. They came to the Rav and they showed him a lung, whatever. He doesn't know what a lung is. He doesn't know anything. He knows what it says on Shach. So it depends what it is. If it's this, then it's tahir. Kasher. If it's this, it's that. So part of the shimush is understanding the mitzvahs. Also understanding which svaras, which opinions have been negated from the world of halacha. We don't accept it. I'll give you an example. Even though the person who said it was a godly Yisrael, but whatever he said was, I don't know what it was, but it's not lamaisa. We don't accept gatus without Kabbalah mitzvahs. That's basics. Everybody knows if somebody did not accept upon himself to keep mitzvahs, then his conversion is not a conversion. Now you could find theories, ideas. There's a big difference between theories, ideas, even a sniff, if something which is used as a supportive tool in determining a psak. But it's chutz lebeis hamedrash. It's das nicht angenommen. We don't operate like that. And you could find me a sefer that you found that source, but you're a big pasek, right? You decided because you just finished, you joined a Machon Smicha, and you're a pasek now, so you think at least. So you'll start collecting, and you just, on the internet, there's loads of garbage. In halacha I'm talking about. There's websites that answer shailas in halacha. I have no idea on what basis, because the answers make no sense. Or the answers don't give any reason. So why am I going to listen to what some anonymous websites writes, mutar aser? I once heard from my father, this is not meant to be in any way a zilzul to a gadol b'Yisrael. Reb Chaim Kanievsky used to answer every question he got. Literally every question. He actually wrote to me a letter when I was a little kid. He wrote to me, I don't even know if I have it anymore. I wrote him a Hadas on a Sefer. It was one of my favorite hobbies as a kid. And my grandfather was very annoyed with his answer. He wrote to me on an aerogram. He wrote back, Harav Braun. He didn't know this is a kid. So I got smicha from Chaim Kanievsky as a kid. Anyhow, and then he wrote no date, no nothing on there. Kibalti michtzavim hayroisav etziyonev yashakaycha. I wrote him some comments on his svarim. Here there's a chasam sofer, here there's this, here there's a stira between two of his svarim. Fine. And I showed it to my grandfather. He said, Ich am vernished. I don't have time to answer, but he writes me letters. He got letters. He once got a letter from the Kloisenberger Rebbe about Rabbeinu Tamzman. He was very into that. And my grandfather started giving him a response. And he wrote up a whole tshuva. Then he said, I'm not sending it. It's a waste of time. I'm not going to win him over. So what's the point? He has his opinion about this. And he used to not respond to questions. He says, I don't answer. But he writes just to write a one line. Hey. He was a bit annoyed. But anyway, that's not the point I'm trying to make. Chaim Kanievsky would answer short, curt, brief answers. And you can't pasken from brief answers. Rav Elyashiv used to walk. And people used to walk with him. He had his regular walk. They used to walk from his shul. I forgot the name of the shul. El Sada. Yeah. People would, what?
The caravan.
The caravan. Yeah, so he had a seder, and people would ask him. Now, you would ask him a question, and he told one person one thing. Literally seconds later, another person asked him the same question, and he said the opposite. And he wasn't stupid. And he wasn't senile. There were two different questions. But for most of the people there, it sounded like the same exact question, with a subtle difference. And then they have books now collecting the Piskei Dinah, what Rabbi Yashiv said as he was walking. On what basis? This is not halacha. You have no idea the nuances of the psak. When he wrote a tshuva, so the Chaim used to give very brief answers. A lot of them conflict each other too. And he would write, Mistaber Shaken, Mistaber Shaloi. And now every sefer, if you want to be considered a popular sefer, you have to have in the back 30, 40 pages of letters, questions that he wrote to the Chaim Kanievsky. So my father once told me, the Chasam Sofer nicht geantwortet. The Chasam Sofer didn't answer such kind of tshuvas. The Kiva Ege didn't answer such kind of tshuvas. Tzemach Tzedek didn't answer such kind of tshuvas. None of the poskim answer such tshuvas. They're good. They have value. They're very important. But you can't pasken from that. It lends, if you're already in a certain direction in the halacha, and you think this is the right answer, and then you also saw there's a one-liner, someone that wrote, B'shem, all these B'shems. But that's not psak. So to know what's psak and what's not psak, you need to understand. Part of also, by the way, of shimush is which derech halimah to use, who to delegate to, or who to delegate. Some questions that you really shouldn't be answering. So this is a question for a mashpia, this is a question for a doctor, this is a question for a therapist. So you learn how to delegate. And also, this is not a question for me. This is beyond my pay grade. I don't answer hilchas ribbis. I don't answer hilchas afros. You need to know what you know and what you don't know. You don't have to answer everything. When I was running, when they were convincing me to run for the Rabbanos in Crown Heights, so Rabbi Shea was all of us was on the phone with me once lang year, and I told him I don't feel I'm capable of doing this. So, and he's trying to convince me it's not the case. So I told him there's 25% of Shulchan Aruch that I don't know. He says, Azab Besura Tova, 75% of Shulchan Aruch kennst du, 75% you know, you're in. I spoke to someone else that I trust very much, and I told him I don't know this topic. There's a couple complex topics I don't feel. So how are you different than Machon Smicha? And Machon Smicha was the pasek over here in America. There's the Betzina, the Machon Smicha. He was a real experienced pasek. I'll share with you an amazing story. I have to share this. I'm sorry. I'm going to take extra time here. Someone told me that he spent time with Machon Smicha watching him shimush. Hey, Pasken's a shailah. Comes inside, he sees a woman coming with a shailah, and Machon Smicha looks at it, and he says the answer. And this guy is not as smart in any stretch of the imagination as Machon Smicha, and may I say I know who the guy is. Not sure if he really knows his stuff so well, but the basics he knows for sure. And the Machon Smicha got it wrong. He couldn't understand. Why is the Machon Smicha telling the lady that it's Torah when it's the other way around? Or I don't remember, or vice versa. But he's not a mechutzif. So not in front of the lady, he certainly won't tell his Rebbe, the Machon Smicha, what he thinks. As soon as the woman walked out, he says, Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, Rebbe, I don't understand. She showed you a shailah, and the answer, Oy! And he started crying. The lady's not there anymore. He took out a tillim, And he started saying Tillim. Bebchias. I don't know if he was machshel a woman be'isra. Could be he was machshel her fakert. Maybe he was machmer unnecessarily. I don't remember what the case was. He'd probably do the same for both. And he's saying Tillim for half an hour. That's what I call Yiris HaYirah. But the story doesn't finish there. Half an hour later, the woman comes back. I forgot what you said. Can you imagine? Talk about siyata d'shmaya. A Rav experiences siyata d'shmaya al kol sad v'shal on every step of the way. If you don't experience siyata d'shmaya, then you're in the wrong business. Then maybe Taka not capable of being a Rav. It's mamash a regular thing. I know a Rav that he was very scared. It's a natural phobia of a Rav. Kriyas HaTorah is a phobia of a Rav. Because you come to shul, and there might be a problem in the Sefer Torah. And I have no idea what. It's so complex and so many details. It's an old phobia. The Shad Ephraim, in the introduction to Shad Ephraim, he writes about this phobia. He writes, comes to shul, and this Talmid Chacham, and Lamdanim, and this one says like this one, and the Sefer Torah is he has a beautiful way, poetic way, how he describes this. Sefer Torah is laying naked, meaning undressed, and there's a whole fight in the shul. So this Rav had a Kriyas HaTorah phobia. Every week he'd have in a big shul with a bunch of Talmid Chachamim, and I think I'll catch him wrong. That's even a bigger phobia for a Rav. Then he gave the wrong psak. The Shad Ephraim writes, that's why he put out his book. So he goes one Shabbos morning, he takes a Shad Ephraim, before he comes to shul, and he opened it to a random page to somehow quench his phobia. I don't think he did that on every Shabbos. Punkt. Comes to shul, there's a problem. And what was the problem? Of course, punkt that page in the Shad Ephraim. Straight out, pull out the answer. But if you're relying on siyata d'shmaya, you're in big trouble. You can't rely on siyata d'shmaya. You have to have the siyata d'shmaya. So going back to the Machon Smicha, the joke used to be about Machon Smicha, he only paskens 3 simanim in Shulchan Aruch. That was a joke. Because everything you ask him says, this I don't pasken, this I don't pasken, this I don't pasken. There must be maybe 3 siman that he paskens. Geirus I don't do, Safras I don't do, Mila I don't do, End of Life I don't do. That's good, by the way. It's not no good. That's the person you should go to. That he has something. I've seen a place where they wrote a list of Rabbanim. People have to give resources for people to know which Rabban to talk to. And they asked the Rabbanim to write which areas of halacha people could ask them shilas. So I saw this list. And I saw one Rav write, primarily Nidda, Basar Kashrus. And then I've seen some Rabbanim write all areas of halacha. So a Rav that writes all areas of halacha, I'm hesitant to ask such a Rav as shailah. You know everything? So there's certain things that you actually don't know. You need to, like I said, Mila. You need to know the Metzias, Safras. There's Rabbanim that know Safras very well. There's Rabbanim that don't know. This new shailah that we're talking now about ovary transplants. So I met a guy that knows this topic very well. And he told me, I told him, I heard about you. I had a session for Rabbanim. Rabbanim that came here for the Rebbe for Shavuos. So I was going to bring a guest speaker. And I wanted him to talk about this topic. So I was told about a certain person that he knows this topic very, very well, and he knows how to explain both sides. The Makilim and the Machmirim. So I called him up and I said, I heard that you're the only one in New York that actually, wasn't you, the only one in New York that could explain both sides of the equation. He says, that's correct. He actually told me that. And it wasn't coming from arrogance. It was coming from someone who understands the reality very well. And I told him, I heard you're also not inclined one way or another. You're very balanced. So can you come give a class about this? He said, no, I can't. I said, why not? Because I only talk about it on Shabbos. Because it's a very politically loaded question. So, number one. Number two, you told me only 20 minutes. It's impossible to deal with this even in an hour and a half. You want me to do only 20 minutes. It's not shaykh. So he knows the topic, obviously. Because he knows the topic, he didn't want to talk about it. So you need to know the topic. That's also part of the shimush. I have a system on Ask the Rav on the website. We have a staff, and the staff write an answer, and they tag me. And I look at the answer they wrote, and if I think it's okay, I send it off. If I think it's a problem, I modify it. And sometimes I have someone tags me, and he sends a link to another question and I wrote, Maha Shaykhis. And what's the connection? He wrote, Doimek Tzas. There's zero connection. Literally, some people are literally superficial. And so you need to, part of the shimush is also knowing what to compare to what. I'll give you an example of a shailah from last week. Someone asked me a shailah. I want to find out something about a shidduch, and I want to find out about someone. I want to call the guy that I want to find out about and ask him as if I'm asking about a shidduch for someone else. So there's a bacher that I'm looking into for my daughter. So I'll call this bacher and I say, can you give me information about so-and-so? And when I talk to him, the way he answers, I'll get to understand what kind of guy he is. So he asked me if it's okay. That question came in on the website. So there was, from the staff, suggested answers, and they were all like totally off. But I wasn't happy with the way they answered the question. It has to be grounded. Give me what, where, why. Then the first basic aspect of the question is Gnevus Das. It's deception. Is it Gnevus Das? Is it not Gnevus Das? What are the rules of Gnevus Das? And yeah, I was comfortable with dealing with the Gnevus Das part of the question. Not a problem. But there's a much more important part of the question, Lashon Hara. When you're asking someone to tell you information about someone else that you don't need to know about someone else, so you're causing him to say Lashon Hara, Shaloi L'Te'elis. Now when you hear the question, you only hear the Gnevus Das part, but you didn't pick up Lashon Hara part. Or you'll hear only the Lashon Hara. There's a few different angles to the question. Should I go on, or you want to ask me another question?
The Rav can continue.
Okay. Talk about shimush of people that I spent time with. My father, my grandfather, Rabbi Marlo, Alav Shalom. Also, a lot of dibuk chavedim is very, very important. And sometimes Rabbanim are put up on a pedestal and they're too embarrassed for their cover to have dibuk chavedim, to talk to other people. And so maybe it shouldn't be people from your community, that's fine. Find friends that you share a platform with, whether a physical space or a social media space, we could sit and communicate with other Rabbanim and get opinions. And sometimes you'll see a whole new angle that you never thought of. I'll tell you what I appreciate about my grandfather. First of all, I've seen many, many pasken, and I've yet to see someone like him. He was straight. That's not a common commodity, to be straight. He wasn't krum. Sometimes you hear a person, I don't know, he just straight. Went straight into the point. He was very, very makel, extremely lenient. The Rebbe told Shluchim to buy his svarim if the people can ask him shilas. And the Rebbe used a comment. The Rebbe said, "Bechlal das alikut from kulas." His sefer is full of leniencies. When he says a stringency, it's solid. He was able to answer clearly. He was, like I talk about the hesitation part, it was very straight, very clear, very honest. And there was a Chassidish aspect there also. The Rebbe spoke about Chassidish Rabbanim. There's a Yiddish Shemayim that comes. If the Rav, Kol Mi She'ein Be Yiddish Shemayim, Ein Dvar of Neshmoim, if a Rav, people don't want to listen to his psak because he has no Yiddish Shemayim. That's what the Gemara says. There was a strong, while he was a makel, he was extremely lenient. The leniency came out of a Yiddish Shemayim place. It's hard to explain it. The Rebbe spoke about Chassidish Rabbanim. He said that Amal is given a Rav and a Mashpia. There were two different departments. Today, the Rav has to also become the Mashpia. He has to have this. Why are you even asking such a question? Come on. I mean, you shouldn't be saying that, by the way. But you should somehow bring across a message without saying that. It's a pasken as a shailah. Come on, you? Yeah, this is. Now, you're not allowed to say it because he's not going to call you ever again. So you can't say that. So there's a certain Chassidishkeit, Edenskkeit. I don't mean Chassidishkeit in terms of Chassidus. But a certain Yiddish Shemayim that's attached to the shailah. Another thing is important to be updated with changes. There's a lot of Pesach Dinim that in the last 10 years were changed. And I'll explain what I mean. Practical things, Pashat. I don't know if this crowd over here is ready for Hilchos Niddah examples, but there were messages sent out to Rabbanim, letters sent out some 10 years ago about a certain kind of oil that women use. We've researched this, and this oil is not usable because it changes the color. A practical thing. Nobody knew that. There was a certain kind of treatment that a woman would go through, and people used to always pasken that she's tamei afterwards, and now people pasken she's tar. Almost everyone, because we found that information about this. And you're reading from the books, and they all write tamei, but that's outdated. You know the medicine that was discontinued? It's the same idea. This has been outdated. There's a certain thing about the other way around also. They found that they spoke to midwives, and they found out new information about what midwives do during birth. And Rabbanim started pasking differently because they found out new information. So you need to be updated. There's changes happening there.
Another example for people that learn Smicha would be dishwashers. If you look at the chuvas of dishwashers, Rav Moshe, Rav Avadia, a lot of studied Lakula. The reality is the technology behind dishwashers changed. The amount of water changed. There are heating elements inside. Without going into
Israeli
the
dishwasher, American dishwasher, Klirischen, not a Klirischen. There's a Rav in New Square, Rav Eisenberger. A lot of people ask him shilas. He has a chush. He has a certain chush. He's not going to write you a tshuva of 20 pages. That's not him. I mean, he has tshuvas, Shifti Yisrael. But he has certain things that he knows that other people don't know. I recently had a very, very difficult shailah. I'll share with you. I'm not going to share the actual shailah. A real difficult story with a person. A person came to my office. He went through a serious personal issue. And I break down in tears. And I told him about it. And he needed a tikkun for this. And it wasn't his fault. Whatever. And I told him this is very heavy. I can't just answer you on the spot. This is the kind of thing he has to sit down and talk to me. It's not over the phone, but I can't answer you on the spot. I know there's a Chuvas Noidi Buddha about this. I need to look again what it says there. What the Noidi Buddha said then is not relevant today. What kind of fast Noidi Buddha was very lenient in terms of fasting and segufim. But this, if you do this thing, but as lenient as he was, it's so not 2025. You can't pasken for someone like that. It's obvious. I mean, you gotta, again, that's an example with the books. So I'll need to talk to someone else. I want to, you consult with someone else. You get a bit of balance what to give. But I told him, Buddha, as he's there, I don't want to leave him without anything. Share with him something about the topic. So I opened the Yitzhak Chachma in front of me to try to find the Noidi Buddha, and I can't find it. I thought I know this Noidi Buddha inside out. Can't find it. So as he's sitting there, he tells me, I found it. So how do you find it? ChatGPT. So he shows me a quote from the Noidi Yehuda, and this sounds so authentic. Bizman hazeh ein ori miklot, whatever, about the particular topic. And it's written in, not in modern Hebrew, it's written in classical Noidi Yehuda language. Great. So, okay, now I know I have the words. So now there's 100,000 Sfarim Yitzhak Chachma. So first thing, I went and searched all the Noidi Yehuda. Just you could click on a certain sefer. And various prints of Noidi Yehuda, just put a couple of words, it's not coming up. So sometimes you put in too many words, the search won't work. It's not coming up. It's strange. So I went, so many people must quote this Noidi Yehuda. So I went through all the Sfarim now. Chapes b'chol Sfarim. Nobody quotes this Noidi Yehuda. So I'm looking at the quote. It looks so real. And he says, "You still looking for Noidi Yehuda?" I found it on ChatGPT. You can click and it tells you where they got it from. They give me a man of makim. Choshen Mishpat, Simcha Feina. It didn't make any sense. It's not a Choshen Mishpat, shailah. Why would it be Choshen Mishpat? But he gave me a man of makim. So I looked up Noidi Yehuda Choshen Mishpat. Loi Hoya, Loi Niv. There's no such Noidi Yehuda. The whole thing was made out of thin cloth. ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a goy nutzim, but some things he just makes up. So recently I had a guy that wrote to me that he's starting a website to answer shilas based on ChatGPT. And he wants my haskama on top of that. What do you think? I think it's a terrible thing. No, we're going to have a disclaimer. I said, disclaimer is also a terrible thing. With a disclaimer, without a disclaimer, people are going to be using it. So he says, can you give me specific what's the problem? So I told him what I think the problem is. So he says, have you tried it? Okay, so now he's challenging me. So I tried it. I sent in one question, Chayve Krisis Hilchas Nida, Mavel, shocking, pasken totally wrong. Well, then I asked another shailah, and he got it 100% right, and with Manamakomis and everything. Okay, to get 50% right and 50% wrong is a bit of a problem. If I'm talking to another Rav, I'm going back to the example I have with this guy, and he told me that he had once such a story, and this is what the Skveder Rebbe told him, this is what Rabbi Yashiv told him, but that was 20 years ago, he said. Today, we can't say that anymore. You hear what I just said? That was 20 years ago, we can't say that anymore. And I tried to work out with him a program for this guy, what's suitable for someone today who's a balabas, who's working, what's suitable? You need to know what worked 20 years ago. There's a klal in halacha called Machon Igun. Sometimes we're lenient b'makom igun. If there's going to be a woman won't be able to be with her husband, then we're lenient. How much is makom igun? What's called igun? In mikveh questions. So Paskens say 3 years, 6 months. So I jokingly always say, whenever it says in Halacha 6 months, today is 6 seconds. And that's said in jest. But I'm saying you need to know the people that you're dealing with, and that has changed also. But maybe you're not assessing things properly. You're being overly lenient, so you need to talk to someone else. Make sure you get the... There's sometimes a question you have an advice in Avodas Hashem, and you want to talk to a mashpia, and you have your regular mashpia, you talk to him, you say, this I'm not going to ask him. He won't get the nuances. He won't get it. He's so unworldly. He won't understand the question I'm asking. He doesn't understand politics. Someone asked me, called me up from Sydney, federation question, joining an event. He said, I can't ask this question to anybody else. You lived in Sydney. You understand the dynamics. You understand if, as an Orthodox rabbi, I should go there, I shouldn't go there. You need to know them. So, you're talking to a rabbi, you need to know someone that knows the stuff. There's a sefer called Machshvois Be'etzah from a Karliner Chassid. Beautiful sefer, goiness. Half the stuff in that sefer are not acceptable. He has good ideas for a lot of things, and he brings certain svaras. Half, that was exaggeration. But everybody knows this Machshvois Be'etzah we don't follow. You'll see it in a book, and it became kosher, because he didn't get any shimush. There's a Marime Brunner that gives up a svara in Hilchas Nida. I just mentioned yesterday to someone. So, really, there's such a thing? This guy's been getting shimush, there's such a thing. I said, you haven't seen it practice. Should I tell you why you didn't see it practice? Because we don't follow it. So I say, hey, let me open my grandfather's safe. I'm sure he brings it. Shalom Tzim Malacha, and he brings, there's a Chuvas Marime Brunner. I will look at what it says in Das Teure, and if Das Teure says that, that's pretty bad. This is not acceptable. We don't follow this. Nobody does this. Yeah, sometimes it's good to have in your back sleeve as an extra support. But that's, so part of the shimush is knowing the Minhag Hamakim. What's the Minhag of Chevra Kadisha where you are? This is Yerushalayim, this is America. Everybody has a different Minhag. Someone asks me a shaylah about shaving a beard. I'll say, I'm sorry, as a Lubavitch, I'm not going to answer this question for you. For us, the Tzemach Tzedek says this is the Raisa. I'm sorry, you're going to have to ask a different Rav. I can't answer the question. There's certain things that the Rebbe said about certain treatments that he's against, and I'm not going to answer a question about that because I'm a Lubavitcher Chassid. Even though in the world it's makubal that it's acceptable, I can't answer different than what the Rebbe said. There's something you want to know about how do you know if when someone asks you a question, so how do you know if you're supposed to tell them, okay, just follow the minhag or not follow the minhag? In your community, this is what they do, so you should do like that. Can I tell a person opposite of my psak because he's from a different community? Well, it depends. If I think that community got it all wrong, that happens. The community got it all wrong. Everybody knows in every single community, there's one thing they don't care about. This group is not so particular about Lashon Hara, and this group is not particular about Tznius, and this group, there's certain things that everybody knows, and amongst the Sfardim, they were not so particular about that, amongst Ashkenazim, they were not particular about that, until Chafetz Chaim came, Lashon Hara didn't exist. We don't keep it. It's one of the things, it's like talking during davening. That's part of the Messiah. You need to know them. The sign that says you don't talk, but the Messiah is that we do, right? How do you know that he's not about Shuv anymore? When he starts talking during davening, the joke goes. So now, on a serious note, this was said in jest. So, if the community got it wrong, it makes no difference. That's the minhag of the community. It's wrong. It's a deraisa mamish. And sometimes, one second, everything you have to find the chumrah, the lashon, the carbon, the Sanal writes, Chas v'sholem lahashvos b'nois Yisrael haksheres kimachal l'Shabbos. There was a minhag that a woman used to use safety pins on Shabbos, and he says, what do you mean? You tell me that all the women got it wrong? Sometimes they did. But this is what everybody does. No, everybody doesn't necessarily make it okay. I once used to give a shir in Sydney in my shul every week on the parsha, between Minchag 10 minutes, halacha connected to the parsha. So one week I spoke about Chodesh, the next week I spoke about shaving. Kadosh Emer, all of the parshas. So someone came to me and said, I don't understand. When you spoke about Chodesh, you said the minhag is we don't keep Chodesh, the minhag. It came to shaving, he started telling me, the Raisa is serious. I thought there's a minhag. So I said, let me explain to you. Chodesh, the Poskim mentioned this minhag. And the Poskim write that the Bach was not particular, and the Marshal was not particular, and the Shalom Shachar was not particular. In every generation, they're troubled how the minhag goes against the Rishonim, but they said this is the minhag. And they bring support to the minhag. Then there's a minhag that people do, but the Poskim didn't follow that minhag. This is what people do. So they found what we call limud zchus, but they said, no, you shouldn't be doing it. Do women bench goimel? So depending on the community. By us, women don't bench goimel. Someone asked the Rebbe, do women bench goimel? The Rebbe said, geim bis merish, as if it bench goimel, machen latzanas. It's not done. But if you look at the halacha, really a woman should bench gomel. But open up the books and you'll see for the last hundreds of years they're talking about this minhag and everybody's coming with a new justification for the minhag. So you're going to be the new guy that changes the minhag and say you're smarter than them. In this community that women don't bench gomel. And sometimes it's a minhag shehunag al dei chacham and there's minhag shehunag al dei dalas ha'am. Stam, that's what the people are doing. Hamoinam is doing. That doesn't mean anything. That's not a minhag. I often have from people, in Chabad the minhag is not like that. So what are you talking about? It's a din of Shulchan Aruch. But in Chabad we don't follow this. So there's no such thing in Chabad we don't follow minhag shulchan. Yeah, but look at this in this case. I said, but it says that that's the minhag. Just because you saw people not doing it, because they just don't know. That doesn't make a minhag. And I think I've given some...
Yesher Koyach, I just wanted to thank the Rav for his time.
Pleasure.
We're going to have a bit of a 15-minute break for people to take some food, and then we're going to have the pleasure of hearing a shir from Rabbi Baruch Fried.
You're right.